Welcome to Simplify to Scale, a show dedicated to helping you scale a high impact and high profit business that you love without all of the complexity and chaos that can keep you trapped in the day-to-day. I'm your host, Krista Grasso, and with decades of scaling experience, I know what actually works and what's just hype. So if you are done with all of the one-size-fits-all scaling advice and all of the overnight success promises, and instead you want proven practical strategies that will help you simplify operations, elevate your leadership, amplify profits, and scale sustainably, let's dive in and get started. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Simplify to Scale show. Today, we are kicking off the first of a multi-part series that is really digging deep into some of the market changes and some of the things that I believe that businesses will need to be able to scale more simply, more sustainably, and ultimately to drive scalable and sustainable growth through the rest of this year and into the coming years. And if you happened to join me back in the fall of last year, where I led a workshop on the future of ops, I had looked very much at some of the market shifts that I saw coming, all of which have now happened and are even happening at a more accelerated pace. So I want to retouch on those topics again and bring a fresh spin from today's perspective on those. But also, when you consider just what is happening in the market as far as hiring goes, as far as who you would be looking to be bringing in as a right hand to support you when you're ready to get yourself out of the day-to-day and step back or take a different role in your business, maybe you're ready to shift your focus to something different and want to elevate your role. Maybe you just simply want more space in your schedule and don't want to be so dependent on, and so in the middle of everything and in the middle of the day-to-day, many reasons why you would bring on a right-hand person. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, but also just the way that you're building out your team in general and the impact that AI is having on that, especially as AI agents become much more prevalent and something that brands are using more and more. So we're going to touch on a lot of the different facets of what it's really going to take for that sustainable and scalable growth now through the end of the year and into the coming years, and how that's going to apply to your business through an operational lens. Now, if you're listening and you're an operational leader, this is going to be super relevant for you, absolutely, so stay tuned. But if you are a visionary founder, make sure you are listening to this series because the things that I'm sharing here are going to have a big influence on the decisions that you're making and the things that you're doing in the way that you want to be thinking about partnering with the operational team that you have supporting you and how you might be making some decisions around tooling and hiring in general. So with that, let's go ahead and dive in, starting with a recap of what I had shared back in the fall, and honestly, the catalyst for my focus on Strategic Ops Institute. Because as I shared then, I truly believe that the future of operations is strategic. And I saw this wave coming with AI, with a lot of the shifts. And what I was really recognizing is that in the kind of space of operational leadership, there tends to be two different types of people. There's those who very much see operations as the behind the scenes things that need to get done to execute on the strategy and vision that someone else sets. And there are those who actively take a part in shaping that strategy and who can step into the business in more of a strategic thinking partner capability, who can step into the business in more of a systems thinking, like ecosystems thinking capability, where they're able to see all of the interconnected puzzle pieces across the business. And as a result, they are in a lot of ways the best positioned person in the business to be able to scale it because they understand everything that's needed to actually bring that vision to life. So I've seen for many years now this divide in the operational space between those who really gravitate towards being a key part of a strategy and then the person who's driving the implementation and orchestration of that strategy, and those who more see themselves as the ones who inherit the strategy, the one who's someone else on the executive leadership team or just the founder in a super small business, right, is setting this overall vision and strategy, and their job is simply there to make sure it all gets done. And I truly believe that in the future, the just get it done and inherit someone else's strategy is going to be completely commoditized. And I don't believe there's going to be much of a demand for that particular type of skill set. I think the future of operations is 100% strategic. That is why I built the Strategic Ops Institute brand. When I look at the capabilities of AI today and how quickly they have advanced, when I look at the addition of AI agents and how some small businesses have like one person that's running their operations who's managing a bunch of AI tools and AI agents, and that's it. Because that's all that they really need, because most of the execution and the doing can increasingly be done by AI and can increasingly be automated. And so if that's true, anyone who is on the "just tell me what to do and I'll get it done, hand me a strategy and I'll go do it," they are at very high risk of being replaced by AI or having it be a fight to the lowest paid person, right? And so if you're in a space where what you do is commoditized, the only way to really be competitive is to have the lowest possible prices. And nobody wants to be paid less. Nobody, right? People probably are already not being paid enough. The last thing they want to do is have to keep lowering and lowering and lowering their rates or do such an exceptional job that they are relying purely on referrals. And they're basically only working with businesses that are more the laggards in the industry, the ones who aren't yet adopting some of the changes. And that, again, if that's something someone really wants to do, they can, but it's a very risky place to be. And so more and more and more, it's that strategic thinking, that ability to connect the dots, the ability to see what's coming, the ability to take something very abstract, like a vision or like a very directional strategy, and turn it into something concrete and tangible and real that produces real results. To understand how to orchestrate the right pieces, whether that's bringing in different tools or technologies, whether that's hiring different people, whether that's investing in upskilling or mentoring people already on the team. It's the person who understands what it's going to actually take to achieve the vision, to achieve the goals, to achieve the financial targets, especially in markets where a lot of that certainty that had been there in the past is increasingly diminished, right? There's never 100% certainty, but there have been a lot of periods in business where we had much more confidence that the things we were going to do were going to produce results at certain rates. There were industry standards. We had developed our own standards within our own businesses. A lot of that has shifted. And so you need someone who is super skilled. Not only are they really great at operations, like the great at operations part is just table stakes. Like, if you can't do that, you kinda don't even have a seat at the table going into the future. That's kind of a given. But from there, what's really needed, the delta, again, is that strategic thinking ability, that partnership ability, the ability to be able to lead at that level. And if you think about somebody who's in a right-hand role in any capacity, whatever level of the organization they're in, if they are in a right-hand capacity where they're working both with the founder and with the team, they're in that really awkward middle of the stack. So they've got to communicate things between the founder and the team in both directions. So they need to be able to speak vision and strategy at a very high level. And they need to be able to speak detail and tactics. And you've got to go do this. And have you considered this? And did you know that if by not getting this done, it's going to impact this over here? And that's going to throw that off. And now we got to go talk to this person. And so they need to be able to navigate between both of those worlds. It's not an easy thing to do. If you have a rock star right hand person who makes this look easy, just take a moment and appreciate them, because I promise you it is not an easy thing to do, to context switch not only across so many different things when you're looking across multiple facets of the business, but to be able to context switch between vision strategy conversations and tactics get it done conversations. And so it really is a unique skill set that not many people are taught. Most people learn on the fly. And that's, again, part of why I launched Strategic Ops Institute. The challenges that small businesses face are unique. They are not like what businesses face in corporate. It's very different in corporate. Corporate moves at the speed of molasses compared to the speed of a small business. So sometimes you'll find somebody who has this fantastic resume and fantastic experience, and they enter into a small business world and they're like, what is happening? Or a founder hires someone with this incredible resume and thinks they're going to come in and turn my business around. And it ends up not being a fit early on. It gets there, but it's like, it's such a different world between small business, especially online small business. It's so fast moving and the pace of change is so rapid. Whereas in a big business, it's really not. It is super slow. There is a lot of change control and governance and process and things that draw things out and make change in a lot of cases almost the enemy, unless you have a really agile or lean organization, which are the ones that I work with and I love. But even in an agile and lean organization, the bigger the organization, the slower it moves. And so it's night and day different. That context switching can be very hard for people. So I saw a really big gap where most people who try to serve small business, especially those who work in that right hand capacity in an operational type role, who act as a bridge between the founder and the team, and who are responsible for so many different facets of the business and that context switching between strategy and execution, it is a really tough place to be, and there is very, very, very little out there that prepares you for it other than just living through it, and people develop the skills after years and years and years of doing things, and one business is not like the next, so you develop skill in one business, and then you go into another business, and it's like relearning all over again. And so I created with Strategic Ops Institute the mentoring and the training and the certifications that gives all those skills because there is nothing else out there on the market that does it, not in the way that supports a small business, especially one that's scaling. And I put underneath all of that training and underneath all of that mentorship, my lean scaling system that I developed, which is the simplest and most sustainable path to scale a small online business, especially for those in that messy middle period where you're in the high multi six figures, nearing seven figures, going through eight. So there's again certain plateaus and certain things that businesses in that messy middle period experience that is different from somebody trying to get to six figures or in the low six figures and is different than those who turn into a bigger empire over eight figures, right? So there's some very unique challenges and things that the business needs to be focused on, needs to be developing, unique challenges that founders have as they're trying to get themselves out of the day-to-day during that period. And so that's all of what I'm training and mentoring people in. But the catalyst for all of that and kind of the purpose behind this first piece of the series in the episode is the need for that person, the need for that right-hand person. And if you do not have somebody on your team right now who can do that strategic thinking and who can be an effective bridge between you and the team, somebody who you can have a real strategic conversation with, not I have this conversation with them, I leave the meeting, I kind of want to bang my head up against a wall because I don't feel like they heard anything I said. All they did was throw back, well, this can't be done. And did you consider this? And well, this is going to happen. And you can't actually have a real strategic conversation with them, or it just doesn't translate between you and the team. There's things lost in the middle. That's super, super common. And so it is probably time to look at up leveling the person that you have if you see the potential in them and they're incredible. Might be time to hire that person if you don't have them yet, or it might be time to bring in somebody else with those skills that whoever on your current team may not have today. But what is driving so much of this need are a few different things. When market conditions are the way they are, when there's this degree of unpredictability, and when there's this degree of uncertainty, this is when businesses tend to need to get leaner. This is when businesses tend to need to lean out, right? The whole backbone of a lot of what I do with businesses, help them eliminate waste, be more efficient, not to the point of stripping a business down to its bare bones, more to the point of stripping out all of the things that are never going to take you where you want to go and the things that you never wanted to do in the first place, but you did because you felt like you had to or you should. It's kind of getting the business back to the things that are really aligned with what the founder wants and what the market needs. But those things are They used to feel like more of a luxury in a market when money was flowing a lot more. In the current market, it's not a luxury anymore, it is an absolute necessity. And you need somebody who can come in and who understands that. But you need that person who understands both the strategy and the execution, regardless of which one they're doing. So, in my certification programs, I certify people at two different levels. I certify people at a strategy level, and I certify people at a strategic execution level. Your right hand person can be either. What your right hand person cannot be is somebody at an execution level. If you have a VA who is out there managing your inbox and doing task based things and either working purely off of SOPs or working based on you telling them what to do all the time, that is not a right hand person. That is not a right-hand person at all, and if you're thinking, "Well, sure they are. They're my right-hand person. I rely on them. They're incredible." That's amazing, and I love that, and when you have somebody at a strategic execution level or a strategy level, you all of a sudden will realize, "How did I ever survive for this long without this?" It is one of the most game-changing, significant differences in a business for the experience of the founder. It is one of the most freeing things that you can do, and it is also one of the most strategic and scalable things that you can do in your business. And a lot of times, founders overlook operations until they are a dumpster fire and they absolutely need to bring somebody in because the focus is on sales, 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 marketing, 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 marketing. So I can get more sales, 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 sales. All I need is more leads. All I need is more marketing. All I need is more sales. That is what every founder in the history of ever thinks until they hit the tipping point when all of a sudden they realize, oh my God, I cannot keep up with this demand. I can't keep running this business. This is all going to fall apart. We've got things so stitched together on the back end. It's a small miracle that we get anything out to our customers at all. I cannot keep going like this. I have to bring somebody in to help me. And that is the time that most people hire a right hand, which is fine if you're there. Hire that person yesterday, like as soon as possible. But if you're not there yet, it would be really amazing to hire that person before you ever reach that point. Because if you hire somebody really good, they will make sure that not only are you amplifying your growth, but you never have that complete chaotic, complex beast that has to be untangled and unwound and undone in the back end because they know what to do to scale your business in a sustainable way. They know how to build the scalable operations to avoid that. And so I touched on all of this in that workshop that I led back in the fall. And the kind of core shifts that I had talked about in that workshop as well. First of all is AI. AI is a part of pretty much every single person's business. Back at the time that I was talking about it in the fall, people were more using it for content and were not yet bridging out into using it too much more broadly. Now people are getting much more smart and sophisticated with it. AI is so incredibly beneficial from an operational perspective. There is so much that you can do that goes far beyond automations, and so much that you can do in your business to run more efficiently, to run more effectively, to run more profitably. You can have entire systems run without too much human intervention. There is so much that you can do with AI, especially from an operational perspective, that people were barely scratching the surface on back in the fall, and people are starting to do more and more now. But the one thing that a lot of people forget as they're adopting AI is who is the person on your team who is the AI expert? Who's the person on your team who's running the AI? Who's making sure that it's doing what needs to be done properly? And who's making sure that you don't have a fragmented business? That's one of the 10 areas of waste that I talk about is fragmentation. And I'm seeing fragmentation skyrocket lately because people are using this tool over here and that tool over there. And did you hear about this new AI feature? And they're stitching together all of this stuff. Sometimes it's just the founder who's barely dipping their toe in, or they might have different people on the team with different expertise and they're using their own thing. And so we're getting a lot of different disconnected things coming up. And there is no one person who's holistically, again, looking at the puzzle of your business. If your puzzle is your vision, And then all the different strategies and all the different things that you're doing are the puzzle pieces. You need to make sure that you actually have a complete picture and you've got all the pieces that you need without bonus pieces from 18 other puzzles, which a lot of people have, but also that the puzzle can actually fit together, that somebody is connecting it together and putting it together so that it can run efficiently. Otherwise, you are wasting a ton of resource, a ton of time, and a ton of profit. And any savings that you gained by using AI instead of a person, you're usually losing because of the fragmentation and the inefficiencies and the way that things are working and disconnected. So you do need somebody who is capable and able to look at that and to do that. And that to me is the operational leaders of tomorrow. I know that is very much what I focus on in my certification programs and what I work with people on, because you need to know how to lead a team that is pretty heavily AI enabled as well. And that's going to become increasingly important over time. So, again, if you have someone on your team today who you think is a complete rock star, send them somewhere where they're not only learning AI, but they're learning it in the context of how to actually run the business and put all the puzzle pieces together where you're not introducing fragmentation. But if you are still using AI predominantly more on the marketing side and more on the content creation side, know that there is a whole world of capabilities in what you could be doing to save time and save money in the business on an operational side. And as a founder, this is not something that you should be spending your time necessarily learning and doing, but you should have someone on your team who owns that and who's doing that. Now, the other thing, which I'm sure you noticed, this really happened over the past couple years, but it's been increasing and increasing and increasing, is the investment in fractional CMOs. And there's a ton of certification programs out there to be fractional CMOs. People have everything from a multi-day event where you walk out certified to, really more in-depth hands-on training, more like the certifications that I offer on the ops side. But that being said, there's a lot of fractional CMOs entering the market. There's a lot of digital marketers entering the market, and it makes sense, right? In a place where everyone thinks what they need is more marketing, more sales, more leads, well, of course, that's going to drive a need for more people with that skill set. Now, the challenge is that while there are a lot of really incredible people that achieve these certifications and that do enter the market and partner with businesses, there are also a lot who mean really well, but just don't have the depth of experience yet. And so when they come in and they join a business and they start working with the business, there tends to be two major gaps. Now, I'm going to use some terminology that is more very high level generic terminology intentionally. It's not official terms. This is more just Krista terms to make it super simple without getting into all the acronyms and layers and everything. But when I think of marketing, I think of it as almost two sides of marketing. There's the marketing creative, and then there's the marketing operations. And typically people fall on one of two sides of that. Now, sometimes you will have an agency that you partner with, and a really good agency, a really smart agency is going to have a blend of both. But if you're working with an individual, they tend to fall on one of two sides, more marketing creative or more marketing operations. And if you're working with a really small agency, sometimes the smaller agencies tend to fall on one side or the other. And most people who go into marketing roles tend to be more on the marketing creative side, but you certainly get some who gravitate more towards marketing ops. Now, the reason I say this is you've got all of these new people in marketing roles entering the marketplace, and they just got certified in marketing, so they know how to market themselves very well. So this, in some cases, leads to a little bit of, I think, the distrust in the market because they're marketing themselves fantastically. People are hiring them and unfortunately not getting the return that they expected. So then they start to distrust people in general with what they're saying. And it just kind of creates a ripple effect, which I'm sure you're seeing. But that being said, so you might bring somebody in on the marketing creative side. And worst case scenario, you waste a whole bunch of money, you don't get a whole lot of results for it. But what you do inherit is a whole lot of now complexity and chaos in the business. Super common. But best case scenario, this person actually did a fantastic job. They delivered exactly what they said they were going to deliver plus some. And if you've invested in marketing, I hope that's true for you. I hope whoever you've invested in has absolutely been able to drive new leads, get people into the whole sales process, and then your sales team or you are able to convert those leads into actual clients, right? So best case scenario, if we go down the happy path and it works very well, amazing, awesome, and can your business support all of those new clients and all of those new leads? Are your systems scalable? Are they set up to be able to scale? Can you do this in a way where the customer experience and the quality of the client experience is not impacted negatively? In a lot of cases, that's not true. And one of the things that I see when people come in marketing roles is they have a very siloed focus. They've got a laser focus on whatever their area of marketing is, and they're not thinking about how that connects to sales, how that connects to delivery, and how that fits into the overall ecosystem of the business. So again, you don't have fragmentation and everything works together and all your puzzle pieces are fitting together to form the picture of your vision, right? And so that's marketing creative side. But marketing creatives, where they are typically fantastic at idea generation and coming up with great campaigns and things that are going to attract leads, and maybe even coming up with great graphics and branding and look and feel, that side of the house, they frequently are not very strong at the system side. They're not as strong at the operation side. And so you end up having this really big gap in how the heck do we repeat these results? How do we do this? And then how do we systematize this in a way that it can be that seamless, really high lux client experience? Now, on the other side, if you have someone who's more marketing ops side, sometimes they'll build these beautiful marketing systems for you, but not always generate the front end results that you need. Sometimes they do. Fantastic. Hope that they do, right? There are unicorns out there who do both, which is great. Now, if you've got someone more on the marketing ops side, sometimes that fits in beautifully, but what you need is whatever the systems they're developing for marketing, again, need to integrate with your systems for sales and need to integrate with your systems for delivery and need to integrate with the overarching systems that you have in the business. A lot of times from a marketing ops perspective, people are bringing in their own specific tools and their own specific systems and ways of working. And that can be really positive, but it has to fit with what you already have. This is where I see there being a lot of complexity in tool stacking. It's like, well, I use this tool and it's the only tool I use, so it's a tool I'm bringing with me. Meanwhile, you have a tool that does 95% of the same thing, and now you're paying for two different things and nobody's quite sure what to use, right? And so my point in all of this is the rise of marketing and marketing resources and marketing hires, definitely a positive thing. And it creates a big gap in the business on the operational side. And if you have done this, I know you know exactly what I'm talking about, and you are feeling that in your business. And if you have not done this, use this as your opportunity when you are bringing on marketing support in the business to make sure that you have the internal team who can tick and tie everything together and make sure that someone has that ecosystems lens and that ecosystems thinking in what they're doing. And again, you will not get that with someone at an execution level. You just won't. They're there to do what they need to do. You are going to tell them what to do, and they're probably going to do it very well, and that's great. Or you're going to hand them a bunch of SOPs, which they're going to follow, and they're going to go and do those things, and they're going to check their boxes, and they're going to be done. And there is a place for that in business. It's not what I personally hire for, and I have multiple episodes on tiers of your team and what tiers to hire at and what tiers not to hire at, and logic behind it. But generally speaking, I find the most value in the business coming from people that you hire at that strategic execution level, the one who could bridge both strategy and execution, as well as bringing on someone at the strategy level. And that is that person who is looking at the full picture, who's orchestrating what needs to happen, and who is keeping pace with you, and who is the person who can step in for you if you need to or want to step out of the business. They're the person who can actually run your business for you. You are not going to have your VA run your business. They might cover it while you're on vacation for a week, but they're not going to be the one who literally runs your business if you decide you're going to peace out for 6 months and go chase some amazing opportunity that came your way, right? And so this is where you want to be thinking about, who do I have to support me in my business? Do I have the right operational infrastructure in place? Do I have the right scalable operations and systems in place? And do I have the right team at a strategy and or strategic execution level? So typically, if you are under 7 figures, you need somebody at the strategic execution level. As you start to get over 7 figures, having someone at that strategy level, incredibly valuable. Now, sometimes you will get someone at the strategy level who also can handle strategic execution or has a team behind them that will do the strategic execution. Oftentimes, you need both. So when I certify people, it's a CSOO certification, Chief Strategy and Operating Officer at the strategy level, and it's a Scalable Ops Manager at the strategic execution level. And so usually what I tell businesses, especially as they start to get into multi-seven figures, is you need both of those roles. You want someone in both of those roles in your business, and that just completely changes things and actually frees you to be able to get out of the day-to-day in a way that you will not have if you have people at the execution tier and are missing those in-between tiers. And also, if you're starting to grow big enough that you can't just have one person as the right hand in the business and you kind of need a few right hands, which sounds silly because you're like, well, don't I just have one right hand person? Yes, until you get to a point where you actually need multiples. I have two. So you all know Jessica. She's been on the podcast before. She is technically my right-hand person. She is at the strategy level in my business. She works with clients, she mentors clients, she coaches clients. She could take over and lead my entire business for me. You noticed when I was missing from the podcast, she jumped in and did the podcast for me. She could teach my programs. She can do absolutely every single thing that I can do in the business. She is my true right hand. But I also have other people. I have somebody at the strategic execution level, my scalable ops manager in the business, who is the person who does things like she manages my calendar, she handles my travel, she handles the bridge more between strategy and execution, and she also works with the rest of the team to make sure things are done, whereas Jess does that at a much more strategic level and works with clients. Yolisa, who's my person at the strategic execution level, she very much is looking at the day-to-day and what are we getting done and where do you need to be? And by the way, I've got to move this with this person because this client had to do this. And so she's handling that. So I technically have multiple right-hand people. And it wasn't until I reached a certain level in my business when I needed that. I had just one person for a long time, but as my business has continued to scale, I needed that extra layer of support and I needed someone at the strategy level with me, not just at the strategic execution level. And that made such a dramatically big difference in my business. And so when you think about your person, when you think about stepping back, when you think about what you need to be in place for the business to run well and for the business to be able to operate well, who do you need? Do you need someone like Jessica, like I have, who can be you if needed, who can coach your clients, who can lead all your programs, who can do everything? Or do you need someone more like Yolisa, who's the day to day in it? All right, who's doing what on Tuesday? Hey, we've got this deadline coming up. What's happening? Like in the details, rolling up her sleeves, doing things, but also setting the strategy for the things that need to get done on a week by week, up to like 90-day basis. Whereas Jess and I are looking much broader. We're talking about things in like 2026, 2027 at this point. Whereas Yolisa's like, okay, Q3, what are we doing? And so think about who you need and what level you need. And you either need someone at that strategy level, which is who I call a CSOO, Chief Strategy and Operating Officer, or someone at that strategic execution level, which is what I call a Scalable Ops Manager. And that is, again, total game changer. Now, the other piece of it, the third piece that I talked about in the session in the fall was how buying patterns are shifting, about how the market's shifting. We all know that, right? I've talked about that enough on the podcast. You live that, I'm sure, every single day. But the reason I wanted to re-bring that up is some of what I've already talked about in this episode so far is things are leaner. Every business needs to operate in a way that's much more lean. And by lean, basically, I mean intentional. The stuff that's super aligned with where you want to go, with the type of business that you want, with the type of role that you want, getting rid of all the musts, all the shoulds, all of the extra just junk that you don't need in your business, whether it's extra tools, extra systems, extra people, extra clients that maybe you don't want to work with anymore. Right? There's all sorts of things in the business that might need to get leaned out and might need to go. But that being said, when you're hiring, you do not want to hire someone with straight up operational expertise, that first type of person that I mentioned, the person who simply is like, tell me what to do and I will go do it. That's only helpful up to a point in business. And once you've gotten into multi six figures, that is not helpful at all anymore. It's really not, because that person is having you tell them every single thing that needs to be done. or they're having an SOP tell them every single thing that needs to be done. And I don't know any business where every single thing is in the SOP. There are always variations, there are always different scenarios, and it's nonstop questions. And what most traditional scaling advice, which is total BS, will tell you is, well, you just need to hire a manager. Just hire a manager between you and that person, and then you don't have to tell everyone what to do. The manager will tell everyone what to do. You just work with the manager. So you're going to minimize the number of people you need to meet with, the number of things that you need to do, because you're going to put this manager in between you and the people. Sounds good in theory. It does not work that way in practice whatsoever. And if you followed that advice, you know that you have lived it the hard way, right? You need to completely restructure the way that your team is built. And the key restructuring, the change that makes the biggest difference of all, is hiring people at a strategic execution level and not people at an execution level. That is the absolute biggest change. But in order to do that, and in order to do that well on the operational side, that means the people that you are hiring have to be strategic thinkers. They can co-create strategy for their particular area of expertise and at their appropriate level. So if you have someone at a strategy level like Jessica is for me, they're looking at strategy across the whole business with you. They're in meetings brainstorming what things look like for the next few years with you. Meanwhile, if it's somebody at a strategic execution level, they're doing strategy more in the near term. They're looking ahead maybe 90 days, and they're looking out and saying, okay, I see the goals that we've set. I see where you want to be taking things. Great. Here's what we need to be doing. Here's the different projects we need to be working on. Here's the different marketing campaigns that we need to be doing. You over here, do you got it? What questions do you have? What do you need? All right. This is what you're going to be doing. Great. Can you commit to that? Awesome. And then they're staying on top of it and making sure it gets done. Right. And so it's different layers, but that person has to be strategic. There is really no place for someone who does not have strong strategic thinking skills the further and further and further we go into the year and into the future. You're seeing it, I'm sure, already today. And again, if you've made a change from hiring someone in an execution role to a strategic execution role, you know the night and day difference it is in your business. And all of this, again, was a big catalyst for me launching Strategic Ops Institute and putting such a big focus on trying to fill this gap in the market, because this is what businesses need to be successful. It's what founders need when they're hiring their operational team and the right-hand person who could take your brilliant, brilliant vision that you have and actually make it a reality, who can finish all of the things that you start and all of the ideas that you come up with, who can make sure that your clients are well taken care of, that all of your systems run, that your entire business runs, and that you don't have to be the one that's doing it and making every single decision and constantly stuck in the middle of it all. And so it's critical. It's absolutely critical. It's what's needed for scalable and sustainable growth. And it looks a little bit different now, and it continues to look a little bit different into the future, where you need that person who's super strategic, increasingly strategic, and you need that person who, again, is that systems thinker. And by systems, I mean they can see the interconnection in the business and how all of the different parts and pieces fit together. So this is just the first part. There is so much more that I have to say. So tune back in again for the next part of this series. This was a little bit of a recap and talking about some of the shifts in the market. I hope you got a lot of value out of this. If you have questions, if there's things you want to see me cover in some of the upcoming ones, go ahead and send me an email. It's info@leanoutmethod.com. I'd love to hear your insights. I'd love to hear your questions. If you had any big takeaways, I'd love to hear that too. So just go ahead and reach out. And again, I don't know how many parts it'll be in this series, but there'll be a few of them. So stay tuned, and I will see you again next week. Thanks so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Simplify to Scale. If you'd like to take things further, I invite you to join me for my Scale Smarter, Not Harder interactive workshop. Head to strategicopsinstitute.com/scalesmarter to get registered. Not only will we dive into what might be keeping you trapped in the day-to-day, but you'll have the opportunity to ask me your questions live. If you got value out of today's episode, I'd love if you'd take a moment and rate and review the show so more businesses can learn to scale more simply and sustainably. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and I'll see you again next week.